This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth, the leader in offshore investing, connecting South Africa to opportunities worldwide. Invest better with Brenthurst.
My first obvious question is, did the asset managers come and shake your hand? Because Mteto is one of the great value creators in South Africa. Look it up. Go and have a look at BizNews, at some of the stories you've done. He went into Altron, turned it around, and added huge value to the shareholders. So now I want to know, I mean, you blew your own trumpet like Peter blew his own as well. But do they come to you and say, thank you for what you did for me?
You know, I've always thought these were people who are, you know, they are not personable, they are not, you know, they are busy behind their screens, focusing on. But these are guys that truly appreciate when you have added value, you know, and many, many times, even now, I've met many of them today. They would invite me to come to their offices and get some updates. And they will always be saying, hey, you know, what you guys have done in Eskom is really, really been amazing. And yeah, we appreciate that, because not many people tell us that, you know, not that we're forever looking for people to be praising us, but the kind of work that we do, it is, many people just, you know, all you get when you're doing this kind of work, it's blame, you know. People are forever blaming us.
Now, I remember walking around Sandton City, with Patrice Motsepe before he was still famous, but not as famous as he is today.
Yeah.
And people stopped him everywhere. It was impossible. You couldn't go with this guy because people wanted to shake his hand and thank him. Do you get that?
Everywhere. And I go to the airport, you know, going there, and I was going with my wife the other day. It was like, we're going, and then the guard, you know, it's like people, they can recognize, you can see how much this load shedding was impacting people's lives negatively, you know, and how much of a relief it is that they've realized that actually most of the problems that we have in our country, they are solvable. All we need really is to focus. For me, I put this, we need to focus on leadership. Leadership matters.
I loved what you said there, but I loved even more what you said about non-aligned. Because non-aligned is it's a drum that we've been beating at BizNews for a long time. Put South Africa first, forget about everybody else in the world. We've got enough problems, let's fix what we have here. Just expand on that a little bit for us, how you would see South Africa's non-aligned status, what we had to change, and secondly, once we achieve the way that you perceive non-aligned, what the dividends could be.
Yeah, for example, I look at the issue of smelters. I'm going to bring it into my space, which is the energy space. A number of smelters have been really complaining about our price to them, and we've recently given them a price of 62 cents, 62 cents, and they think that that is good enough for them to compete with China. But our own research tells us that China is not just that electricity component that makes China to beat them. It's also the technology that China is using, you know, to do the smelting process, right? So my point about all of this is that, okay, if you understand that China it beats you, why don't you invite China to actually come and do local processing here? Instead of, yes, of course, they've got the latest technology, they've got this, so you invite them, you know, to provide them with the electricity that is affordable. So on the one hand, because they are leading, China is leading in the manufacturing space, try and find a way to do that. But on the other hand, there are many, many things, as you have heard from the ambassador, 500 companies from the US. They're already here. I used to work for 2 of them, for IBM for 12 years, for 6 years or Microsoft. The investment that those countries have made here is huge. If you look when we're thinking AI, you cannot be talking AI without talking about these American companies like Google, Microsoft, AWS, So you've got to work with them too. So my point here is that we really have to be looking at what is it that we want. What we want as a country are jobs. What we want as a country is growth. And that should be the thing that is helping us to make these decisions. For us to be making stupid decisions around doing some practice thing with some countries, that is going to be putting us in a bad space. It's uncalled for. I call that, it's like own goals, unnecessary own goals that we are making. Why do we have to do that? So that is what I mean. I mean, we need to be making these decisions, and all of the decisions have to be driven by national interest. That's why I say that in the GNU, there needs to be a discussion there. We say, what does it mean, this thing of national interest? So that any actions going forward must be guided by what has been agreed there. It should not be decided by each and every department, which will interpret things differently.
Rob Hersov convinced me to go to the ARC meeting in London February last year. And it was an eye-opener. It is the guys who are kind of on the right, and I said to him, it's you and your right-wing buddies, but it isn't quite as bad as that. But they were very anti-climate change. And what they were explaining was that the West was committing economic suicide, where China continues to grow its coal-fired power stations. So the Chinese emissions just keep going up, and the West is going down and costing themselves terribly. Now, we in South Africa used to have the cheapest power in the world. We've got lots of coal, and going to a conference like that, you come back home, you say, but why aren't we pushing these coal-fired power stations? What is it that we are doing that is going to make that much difference to the rest of the world, if the rest of the world are polluting anyway? It's a hard subject, but for you sitting as chairman of Eskom, is there not at least some room for us to start using our own assets in that way as well?
We need to be driven by our national interest. Our economic strategy, our policies have to be driven by what matters for South Africa. So when we took over, that was 3 years ago, we got into this board, what we picked up was that there was a strategy to shut down these coal-fired power stations. And we believe that was a wrong decision to do that. We reversed that. So I'm just being open, we reversed that. But we've made a commitment, because many of them are going to be shutting down in 26 and 27. And we said, okay, let's move that to 2030. Because between now and then, we want to invest in technology that helps us to address emissions. Because the problem is not coal. The problem is emissions. So if you can find a way of reducing or eliminating that, then you can continue with the coal. The issue is that it's not just about shutting down the power stations of Eskom. It's also about mining related to, think about the jobs on those mines. So that is our strategy. And if you look now at the IRP 2025, the resource plan for energy for South Africa, you can see that it's giving us an option to go beyond 2030. With some of these power stations that were planned to be. So we have made the decision as the board, and we'll continue to be focusing on trying to find ways and means of minimizing emissions.
Again, it realigns with what you said earlier about the putting South Africa first. We like to talk here about being thoughtful patriots. I love that saying. And I think everyone in the BizNews tribe, if you can align with that, if you can relate to that, I'm a thoughtful patriot. It means that you don't accept blindly what you're told to accept, but you think about it. And clearly, from what we've heard now, that's a big part of your thinking. There's a lot of questions here. Sullivan O'Carroll asks, how will Eskom survive longer term with reducing demand and non-paying municipalities?
So there is, I think it was Pete Falloon who said something like power, something about narrative. Power shapes narrative. I think he says something along those lines. There are many narratives that are out there, and some of them we just take them without questioning them, and we accept them as gospel truth. But in reality, this statement is actually not true. The demand for electricity is actually going up. It's not going down. So somehow you think that Eskom is not, yes, we are introducing competitors to Eskom, but the pie is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So we will have a smaller share of the pie, but we'll still be doing more in terms of the energy that we sell than in the previous year. So the demand from things like from data centers, the demand from Rob is working on Bitcoin mining. That's a huge opportunity for Eskom, Bitcoin mining. Demand from EVs. Most of that switch from fossil fuel. If you are in the oil industry, you'll be worried about the reduced demand in the oil industry for your product. But in our case, because we again made a decision as the new board of Eskom that we are going to be participating in renewables. When we got there, it had been no. Eskom was not going to be participating in renewables. We're not going to be building new renewables plants. We said no. Otherwise, we are presiding over an entity. All we are doing was just slowly seeing this thing dying. Why would we do that? What is the point of a board if your job is to be looking after an entity that's looking at it dying slowly? No, we said that's when we came up with Eskom Green. That is going to be competing with other renewables. So we are going to be participating in the new. We are going to be participating in nuclear because key to this, we cannot as a country depend only on renewables. The issue with that is that you need energy that is always available when you need it. But unfortunately, in some weeks, on days, when you need some of the renewable energy, it's just not there because it may be the weather, it may be the wind. So you need baseload technologies like nuclear. You need baseload technologies like coal. That's an important part of what we have chosen to be able to provide as Eskom to industry in South Africa. Many people here are saying, mining companies are moving away from Eskom. They are moving into renewables. Really? To do the mining, smelters, no, it's not true. So we need to be questioning some of the things we just take as if it is truth, and most of the time it's actually not.
It's fabulous to hear you looking at it that way, because that's not the way we thought about it in the past in many areas in South Africa. And now it's embracing, it's a complex world, and it's not asymmetrical. There's many, many different issues. Okay, John Mark's question. Do you support growth of coal-fired energy, or does Eskom subscribe to the EU narrative that it is energy cost suicide and net zero? Might have asked you that just about.
I think we have already addressed that, but I'm going to answer it clearly by saying that as the board of Eskom, we believe that we've got a responsibility to our environment. We have to minimize emissions. That is very important. So responsible use of coal technology is something that we are there for. That's why we've put all of our collective efforts, our R&D teams, locally, and they're going elsewhere, looking at how other countries have continued to use coal, but significantly reduced emissions. So that is what we are there for.
But that makes sense if you think about it. Let's not dump everything. Let's make it more efficient.
It makes
like
sense.
Common sense.
If you want to continue, if you want to be competing with the Chinas of this world, if you want to make sure that there is reindustrialization in South Africa, you have to have coal in the mix.
You've mentioned it twice, so I have to share with you. There was a piece in our partners in London from the FT where they said the IMF is now fighting with China, asking them to cut their subsidy of industry from 4% of GDP to 2% of GDP.
Wow.
So the Chinese take 4% of their GDP and they pump it into their industry. How can you compete? It's just
very,
crazy.
difficult, yes.
Crazy. Tabani's question. Electricity has become so expensive in South Africa lately, making it unaffordable to a lot of households. Is there a plan to reduce the cost? We spoke about this a year ago.
Yes, there is a plan. So when we got in, our priority was to make sure that we continue to have the lights on. And we now have that. And the focus have completely shifted within our organization. If you go to our CEO and his executive all the way down, they have got targets of taking out costs from the system. It's going to be painful. For the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to be painful. But it is the route that we have to take. If we want to be able to deliver on our mission of being that company that is powering the growth of the country, you cannot power the growth with expensive energy that we have. We have to be going down. So we've given them 112 billion rand of costs that have to be taken out over the next 5 years. That is huge. It's going to be painful.
If you have a look at what's happened around the world and South Africa as well, we've had some state monopolies. Telkom is a good example.
Yeah.
Telkom has had to adapt to the new world and it competes. Are there any examples around the world that Eskom can learn from or pick lessons up on now competing with the private sector?
Yes, I mean, if you look at almost all of Europe, even in the Middle East, even in Brazil, for example, when we're doing this unbundling that we're doing, we're not doing it in a vacuum. We're doing it informed by what has happened in other countries and learning some of those lessons. We have seen how painful the shift, too much quickly shifting to renewables, what that has done to many countries in Europe. The price, instead of going down, the prices have gone up. And they are lucky because they can depend on each other. If Germany does not have the power, it can depend on its neighbors. But here, if we do not have, we know during load shedding, we could not call, hey, I'm calling Lesotho, can you help us? Or Botswana or Malawi. No, we are on our own. So we had to learn what's happening. And the battle is going to be fought around generation and also around distribution. So that's where, in this opening up of the space, we are going to be facing huge competition in distribution and also in generation. And it's ultimately it's going to be good for all of us as consumers.
It's incredible how far we've come. Sometimes we need to look back to remember where we were 5 years ago, where the private sector was not allowed to generate electricity.
Yes.
Nonalignment, I'm glad you're here. Your question is, South Africa has exported its energy-intensive ferroalloys and beneficiation industries, with Eskom playing a leading role with unavailable and expensive electricity. What is Eskom doing to turn this around?
You may have heard 2 weeks ago, we made a decision that that whole industry, they came they said, this is the price that we believe will be able to help us to compete. And we had to look, the fact that now we're profitable, this drive that we are driving, to take out the cost, we find that we can find a price that is sustainable for us. And we gave them the 62 cents per kilowatt hour. And that is the price that we believe will make many of them to continue to be doing local processing.
Well, if you can keep it there, who knows? We could have another boom starting again on smelting.
Yes.
It can always happen. A question now from Stefan, who says, as property developers, Stefan Stradom, we often require new mini substations for our projects. To avoid delays at occupation, we pay Eskom's upgrade costs many months in advance, 9+ months. Yet installation dates are still frequently pushed out with little accountability or communication. This leaves us with tenants ready to occupy while we are forced to run temporary generators at significant cost just to power their businesses. What accountability exists for these delays, and how will developers get certainty on delivery timelines once infrastructure has been paid for?
Yeah, if you look at where we are now, I mean, we're behind. Load shedding is behind us, but the big issue that we're facing as a company is the electricity price, but the other one is the service, our service, the quality of our service to our customers. So it's our distribution business. That's why we're actually vulnerable. We say we are vulnerable because that's where competitors will come in. So our big focus now, for example, we are in the market to look for the head of distribution. Because we believe that we need a complete culture change in that organization of ours if we are going to be able to be competitive. So what I'm hearing from, in terms of that question, I agree. You know, we suck. Our service is terrible. It's terrible. But we have to change it. You know, we need time.
Peter Steele asks, we have heard horrific stories of corruption in the past. Where are we now on eliminating or at least reducing the corruption in Eskom? And a personal thing, why is Mark Pamensky not in jail?
So when you look at corruption in Eskom, I'm going to say that many of you would say, okay, is corruption behind us? No, it's going to take years. What you need to do, which is what we're doing, each and every time we're looking at ways and means of tightening your controls. You pick up, you find that someone has done something wrong, make an example of that person. People must see that person going to jail or being fired, which is exactly what we're doing. Almost every week there's someone either being fired or sent to jail. That is what is happening. We have SIU together with SAPS stationed now in Eskom, working alongside our management to investigate these cases. That's how serious this matter we've taken. And there are consequences. But I can tell you, unfortunately, this kind of thing, it's a culture thing. It will take a long time for us to root it out from the system. But you have to start somewhere.
But Pamensky's an interesting point. And he was the Gupta's point man. He was on the board. He was a chief operating whatever. And they were really, really facilitating industrial scale plunder. Are you making any progress on getting those people?
People like our former CEO, you know, all of those people. The thing is certain things are beyond Eskom. When people are outside of Eskom, what can you do? It's now the law enforcement agents that needs to do their work, you know. Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you confident that we've now got, with a change at the NPA, that we could actually have some progress there after many years?
I must say that from an SIU perspective, is that leader, he was working closely with us over the last 3 years. Now he has moved to NPA. That is good news. It's really good news. So we'll have two key entities that will be helping with this effort. Yeah, he's someone who likes to make things happen. He's action oriented. He wants to see results, and I'm excited about what he's already showing.
So make a note of that, Ian. See how that goes through. Winston wants to know, what are your thoughts on homes going off grid in general? How does that affect Eskom?
So many people say that they will come and meet me and say, "Hey, we are off the grid." I mean, they are proudly saying, "We are off the grid." And until you have got an issue of the weather for a week or two, and then they quietly come back. So there is also that element of this thing of being off the grid. It's yes, off the grid, but not really. There are still there. Many people are still there who claim to be off the grid. But to answer your question, what you see happening when you look at the demand in Eskom, the demand goes, we call it like a dark curve. In the morning, a huge demand coming up as people wake up and preparing to go to work, huge demand. And then as the day goes by, then the demand comes down, because that's where you see the solar PV kicking in. So they're needing less of Eskom. They are using on their own. So what that does is it creates so much complexity in the way we are managing the grid, because all of a sudden, if something happens, those people come back quickly into the asking, because now they are no longer exposed to the sun. They're looking for support from Eskom. We need to be very flexible. So what it has done is that it has helped us to build the flexibility muscle. During the day, we actually have an excess capacity. So we need to find ways, creative ways and means of using that capacity. This is where we think that Bitcoin, during those times, that's where we'll be selling that excess capacity to companies that are in the Bitcoin space.
Who would have thought the chairman of Eskom would be talking about selling off capacity to Bitcoin mine? I mean, it really is beyond the wildest dreams. Russell Labsha, I'm sure you know Russell, formerly at the stock exchange. He says, answer second part of the question, how do you get municipalities to pay Eskom?
Municipalities are interesting. This is a huge problem that we have in this country, it is more about, I think Helen touched a little bit on it. It's really about the values that we as a society have. Because think about it, here is a municipality, is collecting money from the consumers. People are paying the municipality, but the municipality just happens to forget paying Eskom. Think about that. But now when people don't pay them, you are what role modeling are you doing? You are not paying, but you are asking people to pay you. So we have this is a societal problem that we need to be dealing with. But what we have done, we've worked together with Department of Finance, National Treasury. We've worked with the department that is responsive, COCTA, and we have come to an agreement. There's something called Distribution Agency Agreement. So where we are going to be managing the electricity unit of the municipality, collections, investing in the infrastructure, because when people are talking about load reduction and it's actually the municipality that has not invested in the infrastructure. They're using that money, like Helen was saying, using that money for other things. So we have this distribution agency agreement where we are appointed as the people that will be responsible for the entirety of the electricity unit of the municipality, collections, making sure that there are no illegal connections, and doing all of that and investing in the infrastructure. So that is what we have just been able to get, and with the support of National Treasury. So that will go a long way, because that money we're collecting, it does not go to the municipality. It goes, and then of course, any normal person who is collecting the money and is being owed, they would, before passing some of the money back, they would pay themselves.
It's interesting, just as a kind of final comment or on that, the partnership with Treasury, with National Treasury, is not fully appreciated how much positive effect that has had.
It has had a huge impact. And if you think about, there were two people that I would like to call out. It's the late Minister Pravin Gordhan. He played such an important role in the turnaround of Eskom, because most of the issues that are facing in Eskom are people related. Things like, for example, the fact that we did not have incentives for staff, because you need to drive a performance-based culture, within the company. That's how normal companies do. You've got incentives, short-term incentives, long-term incentives. People get salary increases if they are performing. If they are not, they don't get anything. So we did not have that level. Everybody was being treated, the same, because National Treasury, during the time of Minister Mboweni, they had removed all of those instruments, all of those tools from the board of Eskom. We said, no, we need all of that back. We need to also make sure that the leaders that we have in Eskom, they are not on a short-term contract, 5 years. They must be thinking long term, because these power stations, these nuclear, we're talking 15 years. We've got a CEO whose contract is 5 years, it's not aligned with, no, we need to change all of that. He helped us to address those big issues. So that's one piece. And that has helped us to create a culture that is driven by performance within Eskom. And also, National Treasury came to the party when it comes to the debt relief. And that debt relief has helped us a lot to be able to channel most of the funds to maintenance that has made us to be where we are. Otherwise, they did not have money to do maintenance. So we are where we are now, sitting with a debt of about 350 billion, coming from about 480. It's coming down. We think that the level of debt that we should be having is about 300. At 300 still allow us to be able to maintain what we have and also be able to invest in the future. So National Treasury has played a great role in partnering with us to get us to be where we are now.
Mteto, it's been a privilege and a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth, a multi-award winning, truly independent boutique wealth manager. Invest better with Brenthurst.